Hello. Am I here? Here's I'm here. Happy Saturday. It's a rainy day in Brooklyn. The wife and daughter are out. I actually have to do a couple things this afternoon, but did I mention it's a rainy day? I don't feel like going anywhere right now. Plus, I have to go where I need to go. I kind of need to. My idea was to walk, and it's not a super long walk, but it's not a short walk either. And that's just not jibing. I don't feel like really doing the rain. So I thought instead I need to work on some things. And I thought I'd do something different. Shake it up, do something different from the hex crawly stuff I've been doing. So I need to work on some magic stuff. Now I'm using as a baseline something that I remember I saw ages ago now. When was this? February 14, 2024. So a bit over a year ago. This blog post from Draw the Rest of the Owl Bear about I cast testicular torsion. But what it did was it did a great job of breaking down spells. It was looking for patterns basically in how spells worked. I think in BX, right? They're using BX or OSE, so BX. And they took it and they just kind of did some analysis. And I remember at the time I thought it was a great kind of starting point. And I kind of put it in my memory banks. So I need a good way. If anybody knows, let me know in the comments, or if someone jumps in the chat. A good something that's better than just, you could save the bookmark, but then I suppose if you do enough, I guess ultimately what I'm looking for is some way I can really save stuff in a way that I can remember. Now this one I just got super lucky because I have a crap ton of streams, and I remember just maybe 10 minutes before I hit the live button, I said, I know I streamed and talked about it, but I've been poor about always putting the links to the blogs I'm looking at when I do it. It's just a matter of, I'm doing stuff in the middle of the day, and I'm lazy, and I'm just not good at this. And, and I have a ton. And the funny thing is, if I'd put the name of the thing if I'd put the name of the blog in my show notes, I would not have got it, because I would not have remembered I cast testicular torsion. And somehow, so I was just starting to browse through all these different streams that I've done, and I, excuse me, the only thing I knew for sure I could say is, well, I know that my recollection, which could also be faulty, was that I did it on some kind of probably one of the community streams, some kind of stream out there. I know I did that, and but I don't remember when it was. And it could have been last year, could have been the year before, could have been the year before that. Like, I was pretty sure it wasn't in this past calendar. Well, actually, I would have been wrong, because I would have thought, I don't think it was in 2024, but of course it was in 2024. But anyway, I was just randomly going through, and then I was just clicking on one of the videos for no particular reason. I was like, I'm going to, because I thought, oh man, I'm going to have to sit there and scrub and through these streams and see if I can find that. And I was thinking, that's an impossible task. There's just too many streams, too much stuff to scrub. And I was thinking, should I reach out on one of the, not on Reddit, because I'm not really on Reddit anymore, but on a Discord, and see if it can see if I can jog somebody's memory. But I was scrubbing through this one, and voila, that happened to be the one, exactly the one I was looking for, which is funny, because I thought there's no way I'm going to find it, and I did. So I'm not going to read through this again, but basically the concept on the blog was they were doing this in terms of a wizard duel, which I'm not doing, but I'm looking more for, if I was going to, a good first step or first pass at kind of deconstructing a little bit the kind of BX spells. What I'm trying to do is, I have my do anything D6 system, which I like a lot. And what I wanted to do, but with struggling with just completing and really kind of getting stuck before I get started, which is a really bad habit. And I did read something. Did I see it or read it? I think I read it the other day, which was someone saying basically hey, if you're putting something down on paper, you're ahead of all the people who aren't. And I was like, you know what? That's right. That is really, it just it spoke to me, that particular, the way that was, sometimes when someone says something, or people can say something, you can read advice, things like that, it doesn't speak to you. And then sometimes the way one particular person will phrase a thing, it's not new, it's not really even novel, but it kind of speaks to you. And just in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, that's true. If I just start, I've been struggling with this kind of how to deal with magic. And all of a sudden I was like, yeah, I just need to start just getting it down on paper because that's the first step. I can't finish it if I don't ever get it started. So this is kind of me getting it started. And the reason why I'm using kind of BX as a base is what I want to have is I want to have basically kind of like 24XX. I have my do anything D6 is already super generic. And what I wanted to do is add a few pieces on top to have basically pretty much a fully functioning role playing game. That you can basically do different things with, but and I wanted to have one that was like, it's kind of like my BX flavored one. It's not BX, I'm not making a retro clone, but I want it to be more or less somewhat at least compatible, right? I want this one to be what I would use if I was like, hey, I'm going to play basically, I want to play an old school TSR adventure or something of that nature, or just an OSR kind of adventure. And I want to use my thing as opposed to running BX itself or something else. My system, it doesn't feel the same, won't be the same, but I want to be not necessarily everything has to be on the same power level, but basically I want to kind of be in the same sort of ballpark. So it makes sense that maybe if I want to have, say, ad hoc spell casting, which means I'm not necessarily casting from a spell, but I'm using the kind of pieces, or I'm constructing a spell on the fly, or maybe I want to generate my new spells. If I want to sort of keep it on the same wavelength or similar to BX, then maybe it makes sense to look at how BX spells break out, and so I can kind of and use how the BX spells break out, and then kind of use that as kind of a baseline to say, well, where about am I with this? And then I remembered, oh my gosh, this blog post, someone's already done this, and I read it and I remember it, and I thought they did a good job. At least that was my recollection. So I thought, you know what? I don't need to remake the wheel. I can hop on somebody else's shoulders and say they've already kind of broken down a bunch of spells and kind of got this sort of theory around it. And then I can take that theory, and if I don't like the way how it seems to be working, I can tweak it, whatever. But we got this. So that's what I'm figured I would do here for the next, I don't know, hour, maybe hour and a half or 2 hours, hour to 2 hours. We'll see what happens. And thought, yeah, I can do that. And that'll be great. So, like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole blog article. I will post it in the chat because someone else. And if somebody knows, let me know if somebody's got like a good. Actually, I kind of have the tools already. What I really need, and I guess it's really about a discipline thing. What I really need is something where I can go, okay, not only just like I said, make a blog post, but that context piece of it that I always feel like is missing. Because, like I said, if I just put the title, I cast testicular torsion, if I'd had that in some big blob if I just had some kind of big blob of, I guess I can pin this, right? Yeah. If I just had some big blob of bookmarks and I cast testicular torsion, maybe I would have clicked on it just because I saw cast, and I might have thought, well, I got to check all the magic. I got to check all the magic blogs that I've got saved. So maybe that would have worked, but it would not have been memorable. Whereas what I really need is something, and it's probably as much about discipline on my side of saying, hey, I really want to save this blog, and I really need to note what the heck this blog was. It was kind of like, what is it about? What is it giving me that I want? How can I remember it? And then I might have been able to put like magic theory, theory, magic. Okay, which would have told me it's about magic, and it's kind of a theory post, not a setting thing, or whatever. It's sort of that's if that makes sense. Maybe not. All right, so okay, so I want to really get down. So I'm thinking in terms of circles, which will be roughly equivalent to spell levels. I'm not doing the thing. I know that it's and a lot of people have done kind of house rules and things around it about having, how the spell levels aren't your class levels. So, a first level, a fifth level magic user can't cast fifth level spells. They're casting fourth level spell, but a first level magic user does cast a first level spell. It's a little bit weird. I'm more in the what I like in Magic is one, I kind of like it when it's weird. Not necessarily overpowered, but I think it can be powerful. But kind of that I like that risk reward. So what I've often done when I've sort of house ruled or homebrewed BXs, I've done different Magic systems that are not Vancian, but they're not willy nilly either. It's not turning it into Harry Potter pew 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 because I don't really love that either. But what it does do is gives the wizard a little bit more control over kind of what they can cast, but there's more danger involved. So you're a first level wizard and you know, or in this case, maybe construct a third level spell. You could try to cast it, but chances are it's going to go poorly and it's going to harm you, potentially kill you. But you can try it. You can kind of try to do it. And you can also try to kind of mitigate that stuff. And then I like to kind of build up strain or some kind of stress so that you can potentially cast more than one spell in a day if you're a first level Magic user, but doing so will potentially cause issues. So the kind of risk reward. Oh, I can try to do this, but it's gonna. I might be knocking myself out of action or literally killing myself or doing something like that. So I'm like, hey, that's up to you. So if you're in a desperate situation, you want to try to shoot the moon, go for it. But you probably will end up, like I forget. It's like the games where I was kind of running this sort of using a sort of a different kind of spell system. The spellcasters, I had a couple. Well, they weren't going like firing out tons of spells. They had a bit more going on, but they also were cautious because there was a potential cost. But anyway, I'm just calling them circles for spells. I just kind of like that better. So we'll have first circles basically be kind of your first level spells, second circle, third circle, so on and so forth. So the blog, getting over to the blog has a couple of things where they start to basically what the blog does is goes through and tries to define spells in terms of their kind of target, their obviously all the spells have some sort of effect, but basically like the target and the kind of reliability of the target and maybe distance, maybe not. We'll see. That'd probably be something I would add in. So there's two types of effects. Basically, there's this, and they're talking about offensive spells, and we'll have to look differently for, we'll have to look at, because I think their angle was at the time of their writing this was wizard duels. So they're looking at offensive type spells. We will also have to at some point tackle your non-offensive spells like invisibility. So that's, how do we reckon with that? So in terms of the effects, you've got, they're going hamper and harm. Hamper would be web, which I think will come up on their list. Harm, magic missile, or that would be harm. And presumably, we'd have to figure out, I think they do look at charm. Yeah, so they have charm, I guess, as hampering or harming. But it's, and they also have the term of kind of reliability, which I think is good. Is it reliable or is it unreliable? Spells with saves would be unreliable because you can cast it using up your casting, and yet the target saves, and so they get away scot-free. Or like something like Magic Missile, it's reliable. You cast Magic Missile, they take damage. There's no save attached to it. They take damage. So then what you can do is once you've kind of set up these criteria, I got a sneeze coming on here. Or do I? Wait. Oh, I hate that one. There's like a sneeze coming and it decides not to. As soon as I lower my guard, I will sneeze. All right, that's gone for now. So reliability is a good one because you might have some spells. It's a way you can kind of play with power levels, right? Oh, I want to do something. So like a first level spell might be sleep. It can affect the whole group, but it's unreliable because they can potentially save and not get slept. I think, right? Sleep has a save. Or doesn't it? I don't remember. I have my book somewhere. You could see here they get their levels. So first level, which would be the kind of first circle, hamper a single target reliably. That could be something like light, like a blinding light. Okay, hamper a group unreliably. So one spell, you hamper that target, they're blinded, and they don't get a save. It just happens. Or you can do something unreliably to a group. You could harm a single target reliably, which is your magic missile. You could neutralize a single target unreliably. So I guess neutralize is what they're putting charm. They're putting charm in neutralize, which I guess is fine for an NPC. Being charm, given that in, say, BX or I guess OSC, I don't know if OSE's changed the charm spell, but you can be charmed for weeks at a time. But you're basically you're kind of under the thumb of whoever doing. I don't remember because they always change it, right? It used to be you're basically like you were, other than kind of harming yourself, you were kind of just doing everything. Then they kind of changed, like, oh, you're kind of their friend, and now it's like, oh, you're friendly. But charm is pretty strong. But okay, it's under neutralize, and then they have, because it's their combat focus, they do have kind of blocking harm. So you've got single targets reliably, hampering groups unreliably. All right. So I'm going to put in, let's add some blocks in here. So we're going to go targets. Single group. See, I guess I'm going to try to figure this. I want to be able to, especially if I do it, kind of make this the basis of kind of an ad hoc system where you could decide to do something and not use a pre-written spell. We need a way to calculate, to come in and put some things together to calculate, well, how powerful a spell is this? Right. How powerful is it? And so I'm trying to see if there's I was going to do this in a spreadsheet, and I might still throw on a spreadsheet because it might be easier to do. And this is some watered down sweet tea, essentially, for the working man. I might still do this, but I'm just kind of putting this in the list. So maybe hamper. Maybe I should do like a generic. Maybe I should just do a generic list. So let's actually not call this first circle. We're just going to call this general. That's targets. We've got effects. We've got hamper, harm, prevent harm. And then I guess we want to do something like enhance. Something of that sort. So we got single group. Oh, neutralize. What was another one? Hamper, harm, neutralize, prevent harm, enhance. Enhance might not be the right word. Because it doesn't have to be, it could be enhancing like a bless spell, but it could also be, well, invisibility would also be enhancement. But I'm thinking, what if it was a travel type spell, like teleport? Boo, boo, boo. That's not, at this point, it's not any of them. It's. I suppose maybe. I guess the interesting thing with something like that with a movement type spell, it's probably the context is probably going to say, if you're using it in someone who's in favor, yes, please teleport me there. Maybe just it's enhanced. You're doing something for the target, and again, enhance is probably a bad word, the wrong word. Boost. Oh, Arno, thanks. Boost might work. Yeah, enhance, boost. I don't know. I'll put a question mark, something like that. But of course, if you're teleporting somebody and they don't want to, like the big bad's in front of the whatever the fighter about to strike them dead, and then you teleport them back 50 feet, that would definitely be in the hamper category. Pro or con, right? And you can even look at it degree, because you've got, I would think, hamper, neutralize is interesting. How do they define neutralize? So I'm kind of curious where they stick that, because neutralize is that kill, I guess, would be harm. Like power word kill, I'm guessing would be harm. So I'd probably put in order of strengths. If I was going to give them strengths, I would probably say hamper, neutralize, harm. I think might be the way I would go. And then I'm going to add a distance. I don't think they have a distance thing in here, but I think distance is kind of important. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. So we have distance basically contact, close, far, close, far, distance. I like using the kind of generic sort of zones. I think they work fine for most things. We can calculate some things out. Contact is you're touching them. Close probably would be that kind of maybe 30 feet, that kind of 30-foot range. Far, maybe basically melee or missile, at least normal missile distance. And then distant might be further, and then I could even see going further on. But I think it'd be neat to have at some point that you could do, if you're a high enough level, you could do something where you can I don't know, affect something far away, or even like a scrying spell where you are going across, potentially long distances. So maybe there's even another level there, planar or something. But we'll stick that for distance, and that's kind of distance to, I guess, affect distance. All right, not necessarily your. Well, I guess if you're teleporting, maybe that would come into play too. I don't know. We'll have to. There's going to be some stuff to sort out. I'm not going to get it all in one go. So looking at their list, so first level spells for them is hamper a single target unreliably, hamper a group unreliably, something like fog cloud. All right, so if we're hampering. All right, I'm going to write this out. So let's make another list. Whoops. And we will call this one, give it another color. There we go. So this is first circle. This is our first level spells. All right, so first level spells, we've got, right, hamper, I guess, target, single, reliability, reliable, and I don't know, we'll say distance up to close. And then we'll add another thing in here. That's one. We might have target. Target. Oh, I forgot something. Hold on a minute. Target group. Let's just put that there. So, and we can affect hamper or harm. Or harm. This is according to what we're getting from this. I might play around with these because, especially if I'm erring on giving magic users in this context potentially more spells and more control and stuff, then I might make things tougher in that way. So I might separate hamper and harm and say, hey, if a first circle spell is you're hampering, you're not harming. Or maybe you can hamper and then, and add, because what I want to try to do is get some kind of, I want to end up with, so where you say, oh, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and I end up with, if I'm trying to, depending on what I'm picking, let's say, okay, that's 4. And then I want to try, I guess what I really want to make is some quick math where I can say, hey, what am I doing? Oh, I'm going to cast I'm going to draw, there's a storm, let's say, so I'm going to draw on that lightning to strike those 3 guys that are 60 feet away from me. So I go, okay, distance is, that's far, so that's +2, and I can just do some quick math. Oh, it's a group, so that's +1, far, that's +2, whatever. Like, okay, that's what you, and this is what I really liked in Barbarians from Lemuria is you could also have these mitigations you could do. Where you could say, well, I'm doing this, but I'm going to yell it really loudly, and it's going to take me a turn. So instead of it casting right away, it's going to be like, it's not going to cast till the next round, which means I can get interrupted, but that decreases the cost. So that's how you end up constructing this spell as this. It has to be kind of quick unless you can also just write down some spells, which is what I think they suggest in Barbarians of Lemuria, is have some spells written down so that you don't have to bog down your group. bog down the table with kind of coming up with all this stuff. But you can kind of get, I think you can really sort of get pretty quickly through. But the idea is that you come up with some math and say, well, the kind of total cost is at some number 5. And then you're like, oh man, I need to get it down to 2 because I can do 2. I can't do 5. 5 is going to kill me or that's too much. So then it's like, okay, well, I need to make it a longer ritual. I need to make it super obvious. I'm screaming. I need to spend a resource that I have. Maybe I need to spend something that it's not like I have to expend it and it's gone. It's like, oh, like maybe, I don't know. Again, I have a yellow stone, some kind of yellow mineral. I don't know what that would be. So I'm going to use it as a focus for the lightning. Or I don't know why yellow. Why did I think lightning and yellow? Is lightning yellow? No, lightning's white. Whatever. I have some white crystal, and I'm going to use that because of the association. But I'm going to basically destroy the crystal to do the lightning. So that way I bring it down a peg. And then it's going to take me a whole, instead of casting right away, it's going to take me a whole round. So that pulls it down another peg. And then you're like, oh, what can I do for the third thing? Maybe I have to take some damage. Oh, I'm going to have to take some amount of damage to do it. So on and so forth, right? So, and that might even be the best way to do it. Maybe that's even better. Maybe I'm doing this the wrong way. Okay, I'll put this aside for right now because now I'm thinking maybe we need to have something called factors. I think I just need a text box for this. All right, so we need to have factors. So essentially a single target. So the single target is free. Costs 0. And a distance touch or self distance also is free. +1 for every +1 for close, +2 for far, +4 for distant, +8 for beyond. And like I said, all these numbers are I'm just mocking them up for right now to get a general thing. So we got single target is free. Let's see. Whoops. Oh yeah, that wasn't. I hate when it does that. But I might say, or actually, single target is 0. +1 for a. I wondered, does it make sense? I mean, because something that's really in this kind of ad hoc sense, you can get pretty creative. Since you're going to have, as a magic user, you'd have some control. So imagine you wanted to do a lightning bolt, but you didn't want it to be a line, right? Lightning bolt is a line you kind of go through. But you could also do something, depending on how you work it, that no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it hit some point. And you see this in video games and in media, but not in the game. Like, it hits some central point and then you get these spikes out from there. So it's more like it's really what it is you're doing it in a circular radius rather than a line, but it's still a lightning effect. By the book, you can't do it. You got to go with lightning bolt, and I don't know if you can get some bounces, hitting some walls and going whatever. Maybe you can do something, but other than that, it's a line. Whereas you could potentially, in a system, say, no, I'm going to do it as a circular effect versus a large effect. So I'm going to say +1 for every 10 foot of radius or length of zone of effect, radius or line zone length. Something like that. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense. We'll keep that. And then yeah, this is plus. So we got factors. Single target is free. Though it doesn't have to be, but whatever. I'm gonna just for now, we'll see what we get. +1 for every 10 feet of effect. Effect zone radius is clunky. I'll read it later, but basically every 10 feet, either around or in a line. Maybe it should be 5 feet of effect. So basically, if you go, yeah, I'll do 5 feet. And I'll give lines 10 feet. I feel like it's more. I feel like the radius is more useful normally than a line. A line is very what's the word I'm looking for? It's very circumstantial. Well, yeah, it's kind of circumstantial. In certain circumstances, lines like in a corridor or something, lines are great. But and a lot of times, oftentimes, when you're fighting a lot of people, you're gonna get much more value use out of a circular, some kind of circular zone as opposed to a line. Maybe I shouldn't call it a zone. Something like that. Maybe I should call it the zone of effect. Okay. Can I bold this? I really don't like that the bolding barely... Well, there it looks okay. Now we can do range. That out. Range, touch, self. 0, +1 for close, +2 for far, +4 for distant, +8 for beyond. Okay, and then now for the actual effect. +1 for block harm. Harm or block harm? Should I put them together? Harm, block harm. +2 for neutralize. Oh, I guess no, that's wrong. So +1 for hamper. +2 for neutralize. Maybe not. I don't know. Let's hamper. Harm +2 for harm. For harm / enhance. I don't know if that works. And I put neuralize, which is kind of cool, but not what I want. So we have the zone of effect, the range, and the effect, and the actual effect. So the zone of effect. So if we were going to do, where's my Sumatra PDF? Let's see. I think I have D&D. So if we were going to go look at some spells as an example. There we go. First, well, let's see. So shield. What level is shield in BX? I don't remember. Is it first level? It is first level. Okay, first level, good. So shield. Example, shield would be zone of effect. Well, sorry. Yeah, zone of effect. Single target. Range. Self. Effect. Block harm. +1. So this one actually works out pretty well because we've got get 0 on single target, 0 on the range, because you're doing it to yourself, and the effect is a blocking of harm, which costs for 1. That one works pretty well. Know we're going to get to some. So sleep. Let's see. Do they get a save? I don't think they do, actually. That doesn't say. Yeah, so save. The sleep doesn't get a save. I can't even remember. That's what makes sleep so strong. Now, I think in the blog post, they still consider sleep to be. Where'd I go? Because I think it's right. So because they look at sleep curve. Right, where did sleep go? Okay, sleep is vastly overpowered compared to other. This isn't necessarily vastly over other. Sleep is vastly overpowered compared to other first level spells. This isn't necessarily a problem. You might want some variation in the power of spells at a given level. I think that makes things more interesting. In Magic the Gathering, this principle is called the Jedi curve. When designing a card that costs a given amount to play, the design team maps the standard power of a card at that cost as the Jedi curve and tries to fill each set with cards that sit above, below, and right on that curve. This is supposed to reward players for learning what cards are good for their cost and seeking out those cards to build their decks around. Similarly, if wizards in your game world know that some first level spells are better than others, they'll be motivated to quest in search of those spells and compete with other wizards to secure copies. Yeah, so in this case, if we're doing an ad hoc system, that doesn't matter so much. Now, the one thing that we can do is we can kind of take away. So the disadvantage of putting sleep into this kind of system is that we're going to lose sleep's specialness. It will not be. It can't be as strong at first level as it is in the game because it's overpowered. Right? And charm will probably be similar. Charm just won't be as effective at first level. But the flip side is potentially that they'll be useful later in game. So sleep often loses its effectiveness as you start fighting stronger and stronger things. It'll always be if you're in a game where there is some possibility that someone's going to throw at you like a horde of kobolds or something. Like, oh, sleep can still work great, and I think it's a good reason to always use hordes of things, to borrow the title of a war game. Use a bunch of low level things. They can be dangerous in groups, and then your wizard or whoever still has a reason to carry around a sleep spell or scroll of sleep or some kind of a sleep rod of sleep or whatever, wand of sleep. I don't know, whatever, the staff of sleep. I don't know, whatever, some kind of item, because they can still be deadly, and you could knock a bunch of them out. But in terms of kind of your everyday carry kind of spell, at a certain point, it just you kind of just you're trying to fight trolls and giants and things like that. And it's like, well, 4+1, underneath four, basically 4 hit dice or 4+1 hit dice or less, it becomes more and more niche. So that's kind of the maybe the balancing part. And of course, you can't do undead. All right, so sleep, and I think I'm just gonna do. Yeah, I think I just want to do. I'm going to keep the groups instead of doing hit dice. Now hit dice is kind of cool. Maybe just do hit dice for zone for my zones. Just say hit dice. But it's all gotta be, you gotta fill out. So the interesting thing is like you've gotta, I don't know how to do that. How do you do that? How does, so it's got a range. So sleep has a long range too. Shield has no range. Sleep has, yeah, okay. So this is good. All right, so let's calculate this out. And then we'll have to figure out, because the hit die thing I think is really intriguing for just using hit dice for groups. But then you do lose a bit of, I mean, obviously you just have to use fictional positioning, I guess, for the precision of where you're placing it. Because I don't want the spell to just extend forever in search of hit dice to do. Like, oh gosh, I hit this sleep spell, and whatever I roll to determine that it's gonna put to sleep 8 hit dice of critters, but there was only 4 hit dice. Does that mean the spell keeps going and sleeping everything? I mean, actually, that would be kind of cool. You could potentially put yourself to sleep by casting it at the wrong level. Gosh, that's kind of intriguing, actually. Intriguing. I might actually hold on to that. I like that. Let me make a note. Hit die zones of effects. A spell will continue to expand in its shape until it consumes all of the hit dice. Till it, I guess, consumes all of the hit dice. I thought I. There you go. Consumes all of its hit die potential. All of its die potential. I like that. That definitely changes some things. You could have some cool things could happen if someone just went crazy and just, the almost has that kind of fairy tale thing. Is how did you put this whole city to sleep? Because somebody cast some crazy sleep spell and it just like went out and just absorb it, and just it wouldn't stop until it got, I don't know if you think of something crazy like 1,000 hit dice or something. It just went it just took out a whole town or castle. That's a very cool thing. I like that idea. I'm gonna probably hold on to that. All right, so we're gonna do. So I actually like this hit die zones, but we're gonna have to do. How do we do this? So zone. So actually, I'm gonna change this. Is shape of effect. Yeah, single. +1 for line. 2 for circle. I don't know. We'll see. We'll go with that. It might not even make sense. And I think this is kind of range 2 effect, right? Not the casting, or how far, because how far is that point of effect from you would be that range. So sleep has a range would be. I'm putting that as far. Which would be, yep, +2. Oh, I didn't put zone effect. Sorry, I saw this. I should saw shape. Let's change that effect shape. Effect shape. We're going circle, or I should say maybe sphere. I don't know. Maybe we could do. I'll just do circle. Be +2. Range far. Effect What's the thinking here? I guess sleep would be neutralize. Would neutralize be sleep? Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the reliability. Neutralize be +1. Yeah, neutralize +1. I haven't looked at reliability, which I forgot what add 1, which I didn't have here either, so I forgot that. Actually, you know what? Reliable, 0. Unreliable, -1. So I'm thinking give you something a negative that can be, or do you do it reverse and say unreliable 0, reliable +1? Maybe I'll flip that around. I'll actually make it easier to do something that's unreliable. Unreliable is your kind of normal state, I think actually is I like better. And then reliable will be +1. So shield is reliable. So it's sitting at 2. That's okay. So sleep. But I think so here's the kind of what I think is maybe the cool thing is you can try to craft these spells to do things and mitigate. So imagine you have a sleep spell, but instead of casting it on a group of goblins, you're going to do it. You're going to do it to somebody like touching them, and you touch them and they fall asleep, which is a cool effect. So you can take the same sleep, but now instead you're doing it, self. I might change those ranges so that self and someone else is different. But so instead of making self, it's somebody else. But it's touch, so you get that. Okay, now you say, well, I'm gonna have it. They're gonna have to have a save, so it's gonna be unreliable. Okay, and then you could so that you can have this kind of targeted thing, or like I want to have like an electrified touch, which would basically be like lightning bolt, but instead of it arcing out in a line, it's going to be again your touch. It's like having the hand buzzer, the little trick buzzer toy in your hand, where you're going to touch someone and zap them. Then you can kind of craft it. So you're going to be able to craft your spell. This is going to mean that if you're going for the similar effect as something in kind of your regular thing, you're not going to necessarily have it, but you're going to have other things to potentially help you with the mitigation. So I think shield. I think shield could be a good. So I'll come up with some mitigation stuff, but I think I kind of like where we're at, and because you are going to be able, as a caster in this kind of system, you will be able to kind of upcast your spells too. So you're not stuck at just my first level spell. I can only do first level things, and the first level things stink compared to BX. You're going to have all kinds of things. There's going to be kind of limits, but there's going to be some ways to kind of do more. So that's kind of where I think the fun part of sort of balancing this kind of system is going to be. It's like, okay, you're going to have some kind of fun stuff. You're going to have like part of my thing is that like taking away a lot of the creation stuff and destroying, right? You could kill somebody, like you can vaporize them, you could turn them to dust, disintegrate. That would be okay. Well, I mean, it's not okay, but you could do that. But you can't just like make someone not exist, and you also can't like create food and water is not going to be in here because that's your divine stuff. That's what separates the gods from other things. People are like, well, a god is just a creature with high magic, and I'm kind of putting a line. I'm putting a line saying, well, the stuff that's divine is that literally that kind of creating, destroying, those kind of things. Like you may be able to turn a magic user could potentially do like an alchemist thing and turn water into wine, but they can't put water in an empty jug from nowhere. Now they might be able to say, well, I'm going to take the moisture in the air and condense it in the water. That's fine. That's kind of a different trick. But you couldn't, in the absence of any moisture, just say, water. Or, I'm going to make a hamburger. And a hamburger appears. That is beyond what magic, beyond what sort of mortal magic can do. That's on the divine scale. Not that you couldn't say you did that. Like you could totally run a scam using some kind of illusion or something like that, where you're creating something that looks like hamburger and smells like hamburger, maybe even tastes like hamburger, but isn't. It's just mush. It's just some kind of ectoplasm. That might totally be a scam you could run, but you did not literally create, the hamburgers. That kind of creation and absolute destruction, where you just like something just no longer, its being is gone. It was like it never was. Like that stuff is in the kind of divine realm. So like that stuff is kind of off the table. So part of my concept with a lot of this magic is going to be, if you want to do fireball, like I said in my example, it said lightning bolt. It wasn't that, I'm just casting lightning bolt out of a blue sky. It's no, there's a storm, there's something. But I also think that you could find, what I like is finding those sympathetic relationships. Like maybe certain crystals are associated with lightning, so that you can use the crystal to cast lightning. So no, you're not going to be carrying around. Don't have to only, you can, it's not that, well, I can only cast lightning bolt when a storm is on. No, but you have to have that crystal. You have to have some way of making the connection. With fireball, for example, you're not creating a fire from your fingertips and sending it up. What you might be doing is, there's a fire in a fireplace, or my guy up front has a torch. I'm going to take the flame from that torch and like blast it over there, and supersize it into kind of a fireball kind of thing. Like that's kind of the concept with the magic. So in some ways it's more limited, because no, you can't just cast burning hands and just fire comes out of your fingertips. That's not something that I envision for this. But there might be some ways to do something. Like you could probably just think, well, I've got rings, I've got a ruby ring, and ruby and fire have this relationship. So you can kind of do burning hands to the lay person. They'd be like, oh my gosh, it's fire from their fingertips. But what we know as the caster is that really what you're doing is you're utilizing the fire in the ruby to go out there and do that, if that makes sense. All right, so I got these examples here. I think that's good. So they're going up to kind of like other levels where they're going. I should probably be good. Maybe I'll just do this offline. Is kind of turn this into something kind of a table. Like first level, I think that's kind of what I was trying to do here, and I got kind of sidetracked. Maybe I can move these down somewhere. So second level spells, in terms of what was this? Draw the rest of the owlbear said, was hamper a group reliably, harm a group unreliably, block harm reliably. Do we have block harm? Oh, I see shield is unreliable. I thought shield was reliable, but if it's unreliable, then that's okay. That would be 0. And what is mitigate harm? That seems to be block harm. Right? Isn't block harm and mitigate harm the same? Let's see. Mitigate harm from a group reliably. Magic armor, you're tougher, but they can still get through or it only reduces harm rather than stopping it even when it works. That seems like, I don't know. I feel like the mitigate and block. The mitigate may be a better word in a sense than block. Neutralize a group. See, I think that's harm a group. Cloud kill, weak enemies die outright. I think, okay. Block harm from group reliably. Protection from normal weapons. I see. So that is blocking. Yeah, I'll have to figure out the parameters. So you got effects. Right. Yeah, they kind of changed it because they had shield as like blocking, but here, so yeah, Arno says mitigate would reduce, block would block, right? But it just in terms of their own terminology, he uses or they, I don't know if who's written this, talks about blocking unreliably, right? With shield, block harm unreliably. That's shield, which I think is fine, right? It adds a little bit to your armor class. It has the capability to block harm. I think. Am I remembering shield correctly? Right. Yeah, it gives them an armor class of 2 against missiles and 4 against other attacks. So it makes them harder to hit, but they still can be hit. So that's the unreliable part. So you don't need to have a mitigate. To me, mitigate really is just block unreliably. Because magic armor, in this sense, is the same as that's what shield is. Shield gives you magic armor. So they change kind of terms when I think just using block and just using that reliable, unreliable. I think so. For example, block harm from a group is that protection from normal weapons, right? The group in this case being normal weapons. So there's definitely some interesting things here. Which I'll have to work with because in this case, group is not like a group of combatants so much as it is well, I don't know. I guess it's both, but it gets a little bit. I'll have to figure this out. This is where I have to kind of drill down a little bit because protection from normal weapons is making you basically immune to a class of weapon that's blocking harm from a group, but it's kind of how you read group because if this is a higher level game and the group that you're blocking harm from in the case the spell has magic weapons, then you're not doing anything at all. But if they don't, then you are. So like, what is the in the magic sense, kind of the group, right? Because shield is also from a group because it blocks from any number of attacks. It's not just one attack. See, block harm from a single threat. I don't think shield expires after a hit, right? This spell circles the spellcaster with a magical barrier between the caster and his or her enemies. It moves with the spellcaster, gives the armor. Yeah, so that's against a group. So some of the wording they're getting, I don't want to say tripping themselves up, but there's the wording changing meaning because shield, magic armor, and protection from normal weapons are all really the same. It's just the level of their efficacy is different. Shield would be the lowest one. I don't know what magic armor spell they're using because shield is magic armor, but whatever, maybe they're saying some higher level because shield already gives you our AC2 against missiles. I guess it's AC4 against other stuff. So maybe dropping your armor class. Again, I don't know what magic armor spell they're using would be even better. And then protection from normal weapons, we'd probably say is even better than that, though it doesn't really change your armor class, but it does mean that just if it's not a magic weapon, it doesn't do anything. But they're all against a group because it's not just against one attack. Whereas if I was going to say shield was against either it would be a single opponent, haha, you are having trouble hitting me, but your comrades aren't, that's a single, or, it's a group. But maybe in my system, that would almost be more of that enhance as opposed to trying to use I think maybe it's like the group thing. You're enhancing yourself as opposed to casting on a group. Because you're not casting shield on them as some kind of you're not, that would be like, I cast fumble upon you and it gives you a penalty to hit, which is not what you're doing. It's not about what's happening to the opponents. It's what you're doing to yourself. So I guess I would probably rewrite that and say what you're really doing is you're enhancing yourself. But maybe I would say it's like a minor effect. So I guess that's that we'll have to figure out too is how do things like changing your armor class, how do they stack as an effect? So shield gives you AC2 versus missiles, AC4 against melee weapons. I might just clean that up and say something, either just say AC2, like, oh, it's like you're wearing plate mail, which just seems kind of easier to manage than dealing with 2 different armor classes. Because I would, unless I kept looking up the spell, I would forget. Or I'd have to leave it up to the magic user to tell me, like, oh no, it's AC4 because whatever. But that's another way you could mitigate the cost, is if it was like, okay, if you do light, medium, heavy, then heavy costs more than light. So you could, if you're a wizard, you might, I mean, a wizard, you're kind of wearing robes. I don't know, depending on your system, whatever, you're wearing robes. So maybe even casting a low level shield to give you light armor could be kind of cheap in a sense to cast and could work, but doesn't give you range protection. Or you could go a step further and say medium armor, which would be kind of as chainmail. That would be another cost, and then plate mail, another one. Then you could even go kind of magic, which is where you can get kind of protection from normal weapons, kind of thing, would be the next level. The one thing that I want to try to avoid, if I can, is having to get super granular. So there, I might like to say, hey, you subtract X amount of points from your armor class, and that becomes so many pluses, and so we don't quite have to worry about that. And you can basically choose. But maybe it's just, I think that's maybe how it goes, right? I don't know. Have to see, because I want it to be a fast spell. What Barbarians of Lemuria does is theirs is pretty nifty, but there's I don't know if I'm going to be, I mean, I'll probably end up, it's going to be one of those things that people say, oh, you always go down these paths and you reinvent one of these games that's already done. And at the end of the day, it may not be like, hey, I've just kind of reinvented Barbarian of Lemuria's, but they have kind of a interesting thing where they give you sort of your effects, your lowest level effects are ones that essentially are equivalent to just mundane stuff. Not necessarily something that you can do, but something that someone can do. So, but the shape that takes is up to you. So let me use an example. You need to climb the top of a castle wall. Okay. Not that anybody can do it, but somebody can do that. That is something that is within the realm of human, they're human, whatever, just assuming humanness. That is something in the realm of a human can do. Maybe it takes a skilled human. It's the skill part doesn't really matter. Is this something a human can do? Yes, they can do it. It can be done. People climb those kinds of walls. You've got may have a thief in your party that can climb in that wall right now. It can be done. It's a mundane sort of task. So that's in that kind of first circle. Now, how does that manifest as you're casting it? Do you grow spider legs and then go up to the top? It could be. Is that just levitate, where you kind of go whoop and you kind of levitate up the wall? The interesting thing about it, and where it can get a little bit fuzzy, is that the thing you're trying to do is get up to the top of the wall. And you look at that and say, okay, I'm going to do that by magic, and getting on top of the wall by magic means levitating up. And you go up. But if you're going to levitate up in the middle of an open field, that's kind of a different kettle of fish. It's the same levitate, but now you're looking at, well, who can levitate up in the middle of the field? Can the thief do it? No. Can the fighter do it? No. That is no longer a mundane thing, and that changes the spell. So there's a kind of an interesting, I don't know if I would say I call it a fault in the system. It's just the way it works. It's just the spell, it's like, what effect are you trying to replicate? And then what shape that effect takes, in a sense, is not really, it doesn't really, it's kind of up to you. But, it's like you're flavoring the effect. But that flavor can have a different effect or be a different effect depending on where it is. So when you're levitating up the side of the wall, you're essentially climbing, but you're using your magic to climb. It just looks like you're levitating. But if you're levitating out in an open field, that's like kind of some kind of flight, which is not human. So now you've moved beyond it. And so now that's kind of something else entirely. This kind of method is not doing that necessarily, because at least the way it's constructed at this moment is you're looking at, it's not like I'm trying to climb up a wall. What does that kind of look like? It's like, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to, looking at, okay, the range, sort of the effect, like what they enhance, like, what are these things, right? And coming up with some kind of number that represents all these effects. I'm levitating. Okay, how far am I levitating? I'm levitating up 5 feet. I'm levitating up whatever. And levitation's another one that would be like in my kind of divine, like how does that, what does it really look like? Maybe you're making yourself lighter than air, which to me would be in the realm of non-divine magic, whereas that you're literally ignoring the laws of physics would be something different. I'm not sure. Right? That would be That's actually an interesting kind of gray area just in that term, that kind of effect. Um, like maybe I should put a note in here about enhancements because I think that's going to be how do we score or how do we enhancement costs. So we have things like AC, right? That's one kind of thing. And then we're going to have, would it be sort of transformation? I don't know. So what would it be? I wanted to make, to do like a stone skin. This is where it gets, I think I might have said to make some rulings. Like this is where it gets kind of cool, right? I probably, in this kind of thing, maybe I just wouldn't have a shield spell where you just put an invisible barrier up. That's like, maybe that's on that kind of, it's more, um, it's kind of that fuzzy area that's touching that sort of divine thing. Cause like, what is like this kind of force? I know that you could look at like it's magnetism or whatever, but in a fantasy game, we're not really dealing with things like that. We're not, um, we don't have the concepts that would make a like a superhero or supervillain, whoever you want to look at it, like Magneto. But doing something that's more like, oh no, I make my skin into granite. Maybe that makes a lot more sense, and that actually kind of might get around some of the issues of whatever. Like make my skin like hide. I make my skin like whatever, and then you can just come up with some base numbers for what different things are. So maybe there's no. I'll make some notes. So let's just say, I'm going to make some notes. No force magic effects come from imitating, putting parentheses, real, because obviously real in the sense of the world, but not real in terms of it's in our world, right? So there will be no shield, but stone skin, bark skin, etc. I made up this magic system, really simple. Let me see. Let me see if I can pull it out here. Just I'll get it off screen so I can see what I'm doing. I actually need to typeset it, I think. Where did I put it? Yeah, I guess I thought maybe I wrote it out. I did not write it out, and I didn't put a picture of it. So let me find it on my drive. We'll do it that way. Let's see, give me a moment. What was this? This is part of a drive. It was part of a game jam called the Minimalist TTRPG Jam. Where did I put it? Let me find the thing. Can I find the thing? Oh, did I? Where did I do it? Did I do it? Where did I do it? Let me search. Where the heck is it on? I know. I suppose I could probably just grab it. Probably just grab it. Let's see. Let me see if I can track down where the heck I had it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay. So this one I tried to do something very kind of similar. So basically, if we get in down into the notes, I just did something really, really quick and dirty, right? Spells cost hit points to cast, distance affects the cost, you need to perform, you can have some kind of instruments, this idea of correspondence, sustaining spells. But the real thing is that you are, what I really like about this, which I think I'm probably going to integrate with this idea, I'm going to kind of meld what that kind of blog had with some of these ideas. And then the concept here was that in order to cast a spell, to do something, you needed to experience it. Or I guess let me just, you don't create an effect. What you're doing is you're imitating an effect. So what does that mean? So you and there are some gray areas, I think, where there's probably, how is this going to work? But let's say you want to paralyze somebody. That's the spell. You as a fledgling magic user, you want to oh, I guess I'll link to it because it's free if you want to download this doc on itch. So let me link to it. You want to paralyze someone, or you want to learn that spell. Right? Well, the spell, to figure out how to cast this thing, it's not about learning a formula. What it is you almost have to, like Rogue, like X-Men Rogue about absorbing superpowers, you have to essentially digest in a way that power, which means, unlike Rogue, who just could go up to a ghoul and touch them and absorb their ghoulish paralysis power, that's not what that means in this case. What it means is you have to go get grabbed. You have to survive. And I thought about, I haven't decided yet whether you have to roll some dice or something like that. I don't want to make it super easy, but of course some of it's not, right? But you have to essentially experience that ghoul touch. And then you experience it, maybe you roll some dice to do some kind of processing, and then you can do it potentially. And like some of the, and you can even kind of manipulate that. But that means that what the cool thing I like about it is, what it means is that different people could have different paralysis things, because maybe someone did the whole ghoul touch thing and that's their version of paralysis. Maybe somebody else studied a different creature and got their paralysis and studied from there. So it's not necessarily that mechanically they really work differently. They might not, but they might take different forms, and there's just different things, and you kind of get affected there. I think the idea that you get scarred, or you get these things have effects on you as you sort of absorb this experience in a different way, right? Because you're not really rejecting it. You're not rejecting it like like another character would, where they're like just trying to overcome it or get through it. Like, you are trying to absorb it. So there's probably some work in terms of mechanically of how I want that to manifest. But that's kind of one pathway of magic, is like, that's what you're doing. Like, you are imitating. So if you want an effect to fly or do something like that, so you need to find something that does the thing you want to do, and then interact with that in some way to kind of experience. And for things that aren't, like the ghoul touch one's easy, you just get, not easy, but you get touched by a ghoul and you can undergo, like, what does that mean for flying or something else where you can't, something doesn't fly you. I mean, it might pick you up and do it that way, but it's not, you don't experience it the same way. And I don't necessarily have answers offhand for some of that stuff, but that's where you can get some interesting things. And that's where I think you can have some fun stuff. Well, what does sorcerers, towers, things look like? Can you imagine a sorcerer who maybe has some money or something might have ghouls in the basement because they want to learn stuff. They want to learn these ghoul abilities. So they've got a ghoul in a cell. And why is the ghoul in a cell? It's so that they can so that they can be on the other side of the cell, be close enough that the ghoul can touch them, but not close enough that the ghoul can consume them. So that they can stand outside the cell and be like, all right, ghoul, zap me. And, maybe they even have like one of their helpers there to after they get paralyzed, to wheel them away. And then, then you maybe you get the ability, maybe you don't, kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of a fun image, and this kind of system sort of playing on the image. And I think I'm going to tie these together in some way, but I'll have to figure that out. I think the weather has passed. Alexa, when will it rain?
Rain is expected in about half an hour. It should last about 15 minutes.
Oh, jeez. Half an hour to 15 minutes. So I got 45 minutes. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, though, I'm gonna jump because I gotta kind of do a couple things before I can leave the house, and I think that will give me just enough time to do it. And I think I want to try to get out of here sooner rather than later, before the family comes back. So thanks for hanging around and helping me work through this. I'm gonna see if I can do some fiddling around with it maybe tonight. I'm not sure. So I'm not gonna have a chance to stream tomorrow. So this, if I pick up this thread, it'll be during the week. Of course, I'm also still working on the hex crawl stuff. So there's that. But hey, thanks Arno for hanging out. Cheers. Everyone have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.